Welcome to Cultural Studies. Today we're going to look at what is culture. This is the basis for everything that we're going to look at during the semester, because as a subject of cultural studies, we're going to look at what elements make up culture and how we can distinguish one culture from another. Now, what exactly makes up a culture is evident, the elements that we're going to look at today. However, how many different cultures and how to distinguish each one is quite complex. Price's Atlas of Ethnographic Studies records over 3,814 distinct cultures having been described by anthropologists in the world. But it's actually quite impossible to tell exactly how many cultures there are, since it's not easy to measure cultural identities directly. So let's take a look today at what culture is. Culture is the patterns of behavior and thinking that people living in social groups learn, create, and share. It distinguishes one human group from another. Now, what we have here are the keywords: learn, create, and share. So we're going to see how culture is learned, how it's created, and how it is shared. First, let's look at what culture includes. It includes beliefs that people and communities hold. It also includes rules of behavior and what is acceptable and what is not. It includes language, which is one of the largest symbols of culture. It involves rituals such as weddings, funerals, religion, as well as many others. It includes art and what people believe to be beautiful, artistic, and worth admiring. It includes technology and how and when it is used. It includes the style of dress and the feeling of pride that one has while wearing it. Culture includes food and what one believes to taste good or to go together. It includes political systems and it includes economic systems. As we talk about culture, we are going to do a lot of generalizing, since it's inevitable in this case. But we must be aware that each person has a different culture, influenced by many factors. Before we look at the different elements of culture, let's look at the characteristics of culture. Culture is symbolic. Symbols allow development of complex thoughts through the exchange of such. We have many symbols in our lives. If we're driving, we know what red lights and green lights mean. We know what a yellow light means, but all of us interpret it differently. Some use the yellow light to get stopped before the red light, while others use it to get through the intersection before the light turns red. In Mexico, you have a flashing green light, an extra opportunity to either stop or get through. You also have symbols that are cultural, such as the flag, the national anthem, the Virgin of Guadalupe, a cross, certain colors or food. All humans have language, a symbol that allows communication. Art can be another symbol, as well as music and many other expressions of people in a community can have. New symbols are invented all the time. And if we look at the symbols at the bottom of this screen, we see symbols that 10 years ago, very recently, we didn't have. 20 years ago, we didn't have. And therefore, meaning is now associated to the symbols where we didn't have the symbol and we didn't have a meaning for it, or it meant something else. These symbols are quite recent, and with the start of technology and computers and other devices, it's quite obvious, again through colors and what they mean in each culture, as well as the symbol itself. We know that this symbol is one that we look for all the time, indicating that there is Wi-Fi. These hadn't existed before the technological age, and new words come into languages constantly. Symbols provide a flexible way for people to communicate. We're born with a capacity for symbols, the same way we are born with the capacity for learning languages, which is what we know in language acquisition as the language acquisition device, or universal grammar. Now, it depends on what you're exposed to in your culture as to how you interpret symbols. What other symbols can you think of in your own culture? Another characteristic is that culture is shared. Languages, traditions, dress, food, holidays, etc. are shared among cultures of a community. Societies preserve culture. This is why we have rituals and celebrations. Let me ask you, how do you celebrate Christmas? Do you put up a tree? Do you set out a nativity? Do you sing the baby Jesus to sleep? Do you have dinner with friends and family? Do you eat 12 grapes at New Year's? Do you eat king's bread? Sometimes we even have traditions that we don't know why we do them, but the preservation of the tradition seems to be more important. Why do we put up a Christmas tree? Why do we put up lights? Within this characteristic, these shared ideas about culture may lead to ethnocentrism. And ethnocentrism is the notion that one's culture is more sensible or superior to others. This affirms people's shared beliefs and values. Many examples of ethnocentrism exist, including on a very large scale, Trump supporters believing that America is the greatest, that America is better and superior and higher than others. The Nazi regime believed that a certain race or certain characteristics of the people, which they saw as characteristics of an Aryan race, were superior to others. These are very extreme cases of ethnocentrism. But we see it when tourists visit and they say, I don't like this. It's not like I have at home. It's not as good as I have at home. And so ethnocentrism can be very dangerous. We have to be careful because we're comparing to see which one is better, which one is greater, which one is lesser. When, especially in this course, especially as language majors, we want to simply compare them to see how things work, why people do things, but not that one is better or one is less. Another characteristic of culture is that it is adaptive. Historically, humans have been seen to adapt to situations such as the lack of food, a lack of work, new technologies, a new normal. I'm making air quotes in that. Cultural adaptation has made humans the most successful species. An example of this is what you see in the image here of the gold rush of 1849. In the East, there were not many jobs available. People were not finding work easily. Therefore, with a lack of work, people are heading to new places. And one of the places that people were heading to was California in this period of time to try and find the gold that had been promised there. And through expanding and traveling westward, people started setting up new places, new cities, new towns on the way, and therefore were able to open up new opportunities. Our previous communities, our previous societies were much more nomadic than we are today. The last characteristic of culture is that it is learned. We are not born with culture. We are born a blank slate, a tabula rasa, in terms of culture. In terms of language acquisition, again, we might think of a language acquisition device or a universal grammar. But in terms of culture, we are a complete blank slate. We have to learn to speak and understand language, to abide by rules of society, to produce food, to build shelters, to learn new skills. Children learn from adults. And this is called cultural transmission or enculturation. And enculturation is the cultural transmission which lasts an entire lifetime. Enculturation is a long process, and it lasts our entire life. We never stop learning, and not only learning information, but learning culture. The amount and complexity of learning distinguishes humans from other animals. Here we see in the ideas of culture that culture is an element shared by people all over the world. And it has certain elements, being that it is symbolic, it is adaptive, it is learned, and it is shared. And through this process of enculturation, we are able to learn our culture and learn other people's cultures and share ideas about what makes us, us, and what makes other people, others. One of the ideas in this course and in your major is that we should never make fun of another culture. We should never degrade. We should never make another culture out to be less than our own. Our culture is our culture, their culture is their culture, and we can always learn from others and possibly even take from other cultures to make ourselves more interesting, to eat different food, to do different things, and to live a life where you accept and learn from others. This is going to be the most important part in the entire course, that we are not isolated in this world. And mutual respect is going to allow us to learn a variety of elements.